especially since I have way less lessons. Are you filming this too? Film this. Because I have way less lessons than I had before. We have to start filming a lot more of the in-between lesson stuff. Does that make sense? Right? I want this stuff. I want this is the character, right? This is who we are, right? All right, so I'm gonna make this video. All right, you ready? Okay, this is really, really, really important, right? If we are not able to get a stranger to stop approaching and petting our dog while they are lunging at them while we are out in public, we are absolutely shit out of luck for working through any sort of behavioral issues we may be experiencing with them. I understand and I'm completely empathetic to it. It's a little bit awkward to tell people no. It's a little bit awkward to tell them no, you need to stop that a little bit more forcefully if they're still persisting. But being able to set boundaries effectively for our dog is the #1 thing that allows them to start seeing us as somebody that's going to keep them safe when out and about in all contexts of our life. One last point with this, the muzzle is not going to do you any good in that situation because we're fighting an uphill battle. Putting a dog on a muzzle but still putting them in an improper social situation where people are going to be invading their space and doing intrusive things is not going to get you anywhere. It's only going to make your issue worse. A part of the thing that I was talking about initially with that video, which was making sure we're allowing our dog to express themselves more freely in social situations, is only under the guise that we're putting them in proper social contexts where we're not allowing them to be around things that are going to make their problems worse, like on-leash greetings or things like what you described.
Mushroom Kingdom, here we come. We had a thing that vibrated and made a little sound. And he responded beautifully to that, like somebody came to the door. And the same thing I want to fix. It was great. But it was something from Amazon and it was enough for him. Just that vibrating in sound was enough to make him listen or whatever. But Bailey, Matt's dog would be over, or my daughter's friend's dogs would come over. And they barked or something, and his thing would go off.
Yep.
So it totally didn't,
Yeah, mixed messages.
Stopped. It was too much mixed a lot, but we stopped. But so my thing is, rather than start it, whatever decibel or whatever you want to call it, that you would normally use, let's just see what happens on a lower one. That may be enough that might be all you need ever.
Well, so a couple things, right? So as far as the e-collar is concerned, so the particular e-collars we use obviously have levels of 0 to 100, right? And basically, to give you a reference point of what that gradient usually looks like, 0 to 10, you wouldn't even feel it. You put it on yourself, you pretty much won't even feel it wherever it's at. As it goes up from there, 10 to 20, feels kind of like a tingling sensation, right? 20 to 30, a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And even at 100, right? I put it on myself, on my neck and stuff like that. And it's uncomfortable, obviously, but it's not I think a lot of people, when they think shock collar, they think sticking your finger in an electric socket, your hair is standing up, all that kind of stuff. So these particular e-collars, they don't function that way. So it's not like an electric shock like you think of that. It's actually a muscle stimulator. So if you ever had physical therapy and use a TENS unit, right? So it's the same exact sensation, right? So it's a muscle contraction that it creates, right? Now, just to clarify, I'm not sure, as far as you were saying, you want to start vibrate and tone, then move to that we wouldn't be able to do because they're two totally different sensations, right? You can't really train with one, then move to the other. It just creates a lot of confusion. Now, that said, as far as the level is concerned and how we dictate what level that is, that's 100% dictated on the dog, right? So we'll see plenty of dogs that, 10 is enough for 99% of things, right? Where it's low and it's not super aversive and they're not really pushing back too much, stuff like that. And then we'll see plenty of dogs that they truly just don't care about it until it gets higher, right? So when I say that we want to err on the side of higher rather than lower, because when we're using it lower, we wind up needing to use it over and over and over again. Again, low or high is subjective to the dog, right? So for some dogs, high is 15. Right? For other dogs, high is 100. You know what I mean? So that's kind of to be determined, but any level that we're using, whether it's low or whether it's high or anything like that, is always gonna be done to a point where, again, it's fair to the dog, right? They understand what that sensation is. We've spent time teaching what these things are, and we're working with them at that pace with things. So if that clarifies or answers your question as far as, you know, we're not just gonna be like, yeah, we're just gonna start at 80, right? Or something like that. That's not how it works at all, you know? And past just that, you know, we're not even gonna start the e-collar today. That's usually next session or the session after. But as we start it, it's also normal, just prepping you for things that you might see. We always start at 0 and then work our way up until we see some sort of response out of the dog. There's some times that we'll put it on the dog and we'll turn it up and it'll get to like 5 and the dog will like jump like they've never jumped, right? Like, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's too high, right? Where, like I just described, 5 is so low you wouldn't even feel. Like it's like a fly landing on them. But some dogs are just so hypersensitive to new things that it's so startling to them. It's not hurting, but it's extremely startling, right? Now, that goes away very quickly if we do see that, but I always prep everybody for those types of things, because if we're already a little sensitive, obviously, to the e-collar and stuff like that, which understandably so, I like to make sure people understand, like, that it's not, you know, it's not doing anything to them, it's not hurting them or anything like that. Some dogs are just a little skittish initially.
Okay.
So. But I get where you're coming from. Obviously, we're gonna make sure we're doing everything nice and fair for him. All right, so what I'm gonna do in a second here is I'm gonna attach the leash to this collar. And my first step here is I wanna just introduce it, just teach him what to do when he feels it. So I'll be walking around randomly. As he gets out of position, if he pulls towards you, I'll stop, just apply a little bit of steady pressure towards me like this, and then release that tension the second he turns and moves with me, right? So we're teaching him when you feel the pressure, moving with it as opposed to fighting it is what works. As he does well with it, I'll add some rewards in and we'll kind of see what we get. Is he food motivated usually?
Yes.
Yeah? There we go. Just steady and releasing. And just ignore him. If he jumps on me or anything, I'll handle it. There we go. So not really any particular rhyme or reason to where I'm walking right now. I'm just kind of going opposite of wherever he's trying to go. And all this, I'm going to start off just kind of trying to ignore it as best as I can. If it continues to escalate, we'll start kind of trying to correct for it. A lot of those types of behaviors, the jumping, the biting, all that kind of stuff. Just kind of a frustrated response usually, right? Got a lot of energy, obviously, and clearly has learned that he can get a rise out of you and have a fun little game by doing it. Yeah. Sure. You know, I'm obviously empathetic to the dogs when, you know, they don't get a lot of exercise and stuff like that, but I always say exercise or lack thereof is not an excuse for poor behavior still. I have 4 dogs. One of them is a Malinois, which is obviously a high energy working breed. And there's weeks that, you know, obviously I'm here all the time working and I don't have that much time to take him on a ton of walks. And, you know, even a dog with as much energy as him knows that it's not an excuse to start destroying my house and biting me and doing all that kind of stuff. You are wild, bud. Now, one thing to be mindful of when it comes to like things like ball or tug or high energy games is if you play them too much in the house, you can create conditioned associations of like getting really wound up in certain areas. So if you're finding yourself having a hard time with keeping them under control in the home a lot, sometimes actually, even though we're trying to burn off energy, by playing those games, you're kind of counterintuitive to what you're trying to accomplish. So I try to save the high energy games for places where we're able to do it where it's okay for him to have a lot of energy. So obviously you don't have a fenced-in yard, but maybe you guys pick up off Amazon, you know, a 30-foot lead or something like that, that you can go and play ball out there with him, you know?
What happens, like if we come in and we say down, and he stays down and doesn't jump up on us, and we say,
Yeah.
like idiots, you know, good job. Then he's so happy he jumps up.
Yeah. Well, 2 things with that, right? So one, obviously you want to be mindful when you're rewarding of not creating more energy, right? So let's say I wanted to reinforce this position right now. I could tell him good. And then when I go pet him, it's calm. Really calm, right? A lot of people make the mistake of they'd be like, oh, hang on. Be like, oh my God, you did so good, right? And they go over and they start getting them all crazy. And then you create this like level 11 energy spike, right? Which of course they're gonna get up then, right? Now, obviously later on, we wanna teach them, hey, you gotta hold it regardless, but like, it's always our job to do what we can to help the dog out, right? So creating the energy, you know, even things like when you get home, one thing that I did with my dogs that I've implemented for years now is I do usually about 5 minutes of like no touch, no talk, no eye contact when I get in the house, right? Because they're excited, right? I let them out of the crates, they're amped up, and I just make sure I don't reinforce that state of mind. I wait until they settle down a little bit, then I interact with them, right? The second point here is where most training goes wrong is you don't have a clear way to then reinforce the position if he doesn't do what it is that we want, right? So I could tell him, good job, and then if he gets up, I know that I've established this concrete way to hold him accountable for holding that position still, right? So I could test that, good job, still holding. Give him a pet, still holding, right? Okay, then release him off.
I have a friend who's really trained her dog well, and
Yep.
granted it's a little papillon, but she does, like what you said, like as soon as they sit down to eat,
Sure.
this dog goes in its crate without, she doesn't say anything.
Yep.
It stays there and doesn't move until...
She's patterned that in, right? That's the cool thing about dog training is the more you do a particular thing at the same time every time, the more the dog just starts to kind of anticipate it, right? So guests coming over, every time I have guests come over the house, I put my dogs on their beds for the first couple minutes. So now when guests come over the house, they generally speaking will kind of start defaulting to like looking to me because they know I'm about to ask them to do something, you know? So it makes it easier for them to be successful. At dinner time, a lot of people set that routine of, you know, the dog either goes in the crate, goes on the bed, or goes in it down for dinner time, you know? There you go. Let me see your leash real quick one more time. All right, so right now when he's getting distracted, the problem is you're hesitating a lot with it, right? So meaning like right there, for example, he wanted to go pull and see what's going on over there. And we kind of like, you tried to stop him for a second, then you kind of let him do it. And then you're like, well, he's not going this way, so I might as well do a sit. So you gotta be a little bit more deliberate of where you wanna go with him, right? Meaning, let's say I wanna do just laps around the room right now, right? I'm gonna forget what's going on over there, and I'm just gonna start doing the laps. So I'm moving. And notice I didn't even wait until he focused on me there. I just started walking, and I'm walking at my pace. Oh, watch step there. And again, if he gets distracted by something, I'm just gonna keep moving. And as he realizes that I'm more in control of this than he is, and I'm not gonna kind of cater to some of those distractions like that, you see how much more focused he is on me, right? Even right there, he was like, oh, mom's going and sitting down, but I was still moving, so he realized very quickly he had to keep walking with me. So a lot of this is kind of this mentality of you gotta like walk with a purpose with it, you know? And it's normal, I mean, some of this is like harder than it looks initially, so doing it's a little bit awkward, but just really focus on what you're trying to do as opposed to what he's doing, right? Same deal with those sits, right? Steady, release, right? Okay, then I'm walking. And see how he was hesitating there? I didn't tell him okay again or anything, I just kept moving, right? Same deal. Pressure, release. Okay. Pressure, release. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, okay, I don't want to do the whole thing 2 times, I'm trying to do the pressure, like,
Yeah.
I was more concentrating on what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and like I said, it's harder than it looks initially. It's a little awkward initially. So another thing that will help you out a little bit, don't hold your leash so loose, right? You could initially, just to make sure you got good control, the shorter you hold that, the easier it's gonna be to apply your pressure, right? So if I'm walking and the leash is here, there's no alternative, right? He can't get himself all over the place like he can if I give him this much slack, right? Even with those sits. When I stop, see how quick I can apply that pressure like that? It makes it much easier. So why don't you try one more lap of that? I want you to hold that leash much shorter with this. And again, much more commitment to where it is that you're trying to go. So start with just your walking, no sits or anything. There you go. That already looks much better. Excellent. Perfect turn there. One last adjustment I want you guys to make here. So when you were doing your walking, you were really kind of staying tense up like this. And the problem with that is two things. One, even when he was in correct position, he was feeling a lot of tension on the collar, which is not the goal, right? The goal should be when he's in the correct position, no pressure. When he's out of position, pressure. And two, if you look at this, that actually puts the leash in front of you, meaning it's going to be harder to keep him where it is you want him to be, right? So when I'm doing it, I always want my arm to be pretty loose at my side, meaning that leash is going to have to be pretty short. And then as I'm walking, if I need to get him to back up, I could pull back like that. But aside from that, see how there's no tension on that collar, but I could quickly apply it if I need to like that, right? Now you were doing a good job of with the sits, making sure when he sat, all the pressure did turn off, which is great, obviously. We just want to adapt that to the leash walking also. Very good. You did pretty good, bud. You did pretty good. Yeah, he looks great. You know, again, a lot of energy like we talked about. I mean, you know, just needs some training. He definitely is not a bad dog by any means. Just needs some communication. You know, some of that jumping and biting the leash at the beginning, he just needed to realize it wasn't working. A lot of dogs will just kind of start throwing that energy out there. One, because they have a lot of energy, and two, because they've typically learned it can get some sort of rise out of us, right? Yeah. So by not giving into it, and if it continued escalating, telling him no and actually giving a correction for that, he very quickly realized, well, that didn't work. Yeah. Obviously, as we started moving through things, started taking the rewards and stuff, which was great. You could start adding some rewards in when you're doing this at home, obviously. But just kind of put him through the motions with those commands. So we're looking to see the leash walking, the sits, and the beds look good, right? Again,
he has a bed. He doesn't. We bought it anyway.
That's fine.
But he has a good bed, so I could put it in a place and use it, substitute it, and
put it wherever you're ultimately going to want that spot to be that he goes and holds when guests come over. So.
Still do it with the leash.
Still do it with the leash. Yeah, we're only doing it with the leash, and again, not around a ton of distractions or anything. Yeah. Right? We're not looking to move mountains with this by any means. Yeah. Right? We're just looking to start shaping some of this and get him used to working with us.
How many minutes a day?
I usually recommend 2 sessions. It could literally be like 5 minutes each. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. We're just looking to put him through the motions with it. As we move further along through the training process, you'll start seeing that certain things you need to work on a little longer, or certain things aren't even going to be doing additional things. It's just like the things you're already doing, you do like when you're walking in or whatever, you know. But for now, yeah, just a couple short sessions a day. And we're going to do one more of each of those.
Okay. Sit.
Perfect. Like back to back. That's right.
Okay.
All right, one last bed.
Bed.
Sweet. Unbelievable.
okay.
Chester said, what's sharing?
Yeah.
All right, last step here, alternate between the two a couple times. Nice. There you go. Patience with them, patience. Now, a lot of this has to do with, right, your impulse control, not yours, their impulse control when you're giving them treats is probably a little off at home usually, right? So tell them no. No. And tell them sit again. So I would actually take that as a sign that you probably should work them with the rewards a little bit more at home, just so you could work through some of that. Like they gotta learn that the only way they could access that treat is by staying stable. So you could even do, let me go ahead and see Chester real quick from you.
Well, I also have all the treats in my hand.
That's fine, no, regardless of how you do it, right? Let's say I have, like right now I've got a handful of treats. Come here, bud, sit. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll even work drills where I take that treat and I kind of go near him and I make sure he's waiting. Good. And then I give it to him, right? Or you could even play, no, sit. Play games where it's like you hold it up and then see, is he gonna try to jump for it or not? And then once he's stable, good. Then reward, right? So, okay, I think where a lot of people go wrong is their default with it is just give the treat, right? So they'll go sit. And then once they're in the sit, they're just like, here you go, right? It's going right to it without any mindset of like, is he being patient for that reward or not? Okay, so just by focusing on those things, sit, and expecting that he's gonna make mistakes with it, you can get past a lot of that kind of stuff. You know, even things like, let me see this real quick. Like if I were to drop this, obviously that's not an excuse for him to get up and go get it. Good. So I could practice. Good. Dropping and then rewarding when he does the correct thing, right? Okay, here you go. And then you can let him go get it after. So just be a little bit more mindful of how you're giving the rewards. Perfect. And this is where, so you were doing like the double reward. Again, it's not wrong to do that by any means, but if you're constantly just going, zoop, you can't pay attention to what both of them are doing, which is why I'll usually focus on one dog at a time. Because what that does as well is, let's say they're both in sits here and I'm rewarding Chester and Sammy gets out of the sit to come and try and get that reward, I could address that problem then, right? Just like that, perfect. Yeah, that looks much better. I think they look pretty good.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna end that a little bit early. They're ending on a nice high note with them. They did phenomenal with that. Again, started off doing well, but a little nervous, obviously, and they're looking really great right now. So I'm pleased with that for sure. So this week is gonna be all about you just letting them just do well at home, right? I would like for you to do a lot of your sessions with the treats this week. You know, keep them nice and engaged. We were working very low. I mean, we were at like a 2 on this the whole time. If we needed to turn it higher, we would have obviously. But I was more focused on their attitude than anything with stuff today. So work your bed stays, work your sit stays with them, and just keep them kind of peppy and happy with it. All right, let's see. Is she gonna do it?
Oh yeah, she wants to get out of here.
But she likes when Chester gets,
Yep.
go to your seat. There you go, good boy. Go ahead, Sammy.
You're so close. Hey, look at that. Much better. The Ecollar and work through that hurdle where he's like, I don't want the treats that you have for me right now. I don't exactly know what it is that I'm supposed to do right now. And I think that I'm supposed to be by this person, or I'm gonna go seek comfort from this person. And that's where working them past that point can help them overcome hurdles so well, you know? Because you'll find next time you run into that exact same situation, he's gonna rebound from it much quicker, and it's not gonna take as much pressure in order to get him to do so, you know?
Yeah, he did that one of the times where he
Yeah.
kind of like stopped midway, and then I was like, no.
Yep.
And he was like, okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so you'll for sure see stuff like that. And it's like, you know, we either see it at some point in the training here, or we'll see it in the send home, like Max, for example. Max did really great when he was here, but in the send home lesson, he flew through everything, did phenomenal, and then we were out on a walk and we were working it down. He did his first 3 really well, and then his like 4th one, he got really distracted by something. I needed to correct him a little bit higher than usual for it, and then it's like his brain just went to, I don't know what down is anymore, right? And we just had to work him through that, and he wasn't interested in the food, and we just had to work him through that hurdle, and then we worked him through that hurdle, and he was a star with the downs and after that. So it's just a little learning opportunity they experience.
What's a ferocious animal?
That's right.
Thank you for looking after us.
No problem. Come on, Gracie. Let's go. That was the most energetic drop off ever. The 2 things that I usually say when it comes to rewards, are you filming this? The 2 things I'll usually tell people, and like one of them is kind of just fluffed a little bit. This is me telling the secrets right now, right? The other one is like actually legitimate. So the one is I'll tell people like the way I like to use rewards, mostly because our system is not primarily reward based, it's primarily making sure the dog understands the boundaries and the corrections and stuff like that, is I want to make sure we're rewarding for correct behavior as opposed to using the reward as like a distraction or a bribe, right? So I'm going to make sure the dog is performing the behavior well without the reward, then I'll add in the reward for correct behavior. Now again, that one is fluff because in some cases we're gonna actually do that. In other cases, obviously I wanna use the rewards to teach things, right? So that one's kind of dog dependent based on who I tell. The one I was telling them a lot today was as they're giving the treats, be mindful of how you're giving the treats. So a lot of people are just jupe, 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 and what happens is the dog is all over the place and they're getting up and they're chasing that reward around and stuff like that, and there's no impulse control to how we're giving that reward. They're just all over the place, right? You're doing pretty good right now though. What I do is when I give that reward, no different with the down, is I make sure the dog is, no, like that. I make sure they're actually waiting, good. Then I reward, right? So it's not a matter of rewarding for nothing or anything like that. It's just making sure as we deliver the reward, the dog is not just getting into autopilot of like jump for the treat, jump for the treat, jump for the treat, right? So I should realistically be able to, good, have these treats all over the place, good, and have the dog waiting for them, right? I was talking about, no, bed, good. Oh, you don't want the fish oil pouch? I don't know why that's even in my treat pouch.
Really
Yeah. Did she eat it?
saw you give it to the
Yeah.
dog, and it was
Good.
sitting there, and I was like, what is that?
I just casually picked it up and put it away.
Go the other bag, you're like,
I think I got these snacks like from somebody's like, no, it's fish oil. It's not pills, Bridget. It's fish oil. I'm just trying to make her. So it was we had a pouch of food laying around that was just like a pre-mixed food that probably just had fish oil in it. But that's what those are the only things I care about with the rewards is how we're delivering them, obviously, and then again, dog dependent based on where and when we're giving them. But sometimes, again, if I really wanted to get crazy with things, you could really have the food like all over the place and make sure the dog is stabilizing, right? Good. You just don't want them being too jumpy for it, right?
Okay.
Good.
So I said the right thing then.
Well, I don't know. You remember what you said?
Yeah. Pretty much that.
All right.
I'm excited.
Can you recite it for me? Good.